Hello, and welcome back. Tonight, we step into ancient Rome, a world of marble temples, whispered conspiracies, and political violence so brutal it reshaped the future of the world. In 44 BC, a group of Roman senators surrounded the most powerful man alive and stabbed him 23 times. They believed they were saving the Republic. Instead, they triggered 12 years of revenge, civil war, mass executions, and the birth of the Roman Empire. Every single man involved in the assassination of Julius Caesar would be hunted down. None of them died peacefully, not one. Some died by their own hand. Some were tortured. Some were betrayed by the very soldiers they trusted. And the person who destroyed them all was an 18-year-old boy nobody took seriously. This is their story. This is the fall of the liberators and the rise of Augustus. But to understand the revenge, we must first understand the fear, because Caesar was not murdered in a moment of madness. He was murdered in slow motion. For years, Rome had been breaking. The Republic was never designed to rule an empire. Its political system had been built for a single city, not for lands stretching from Spain to Syria. Every conquest made Rome richer, more powerful, and more unstable. Generals returned from wars with loyal armies, armies loyal to men, not to the Senate. And one general was more successful than all the rest: Gaius Julius Caesar. He conquered Gaul, modern France, Belgium, parts of Germany. Millions were killed, millions enslaved, and his soldiers loved him for it. He paid them well, shared hardships, won victories no one thought possible. To them, he wasn't a politician, he was a legend. And legends are dangerous in a republic built on equality. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon River in 49 BC, he declared war on Rome itself. Civil war followed, and Caesar won. His enemies fled, or died, or begged for mercy. Most were forgiven, including the men who would later kill him. Caesar didn't just win power, he reshaped Rome around himself. He filled the Senate with loyalists, reformed the calendar, controlled elections, appointed governors, held the treasury, commanded the legions. Then, in 44 BC, the Senate gave him a title Rome had feared for centuries: dictator for life. Not dictator for a crisis, not dictator for a war, for life. To many Romans, this meant only one thing: Rome had a king again. And Rome had killed its last king 500 years earlier. The men who believed they were saving the Republic began meeting in secret. They called themselves liberatores, the liberators. History would remember them differently. They met at night, in private homes, in quiet gardens. Names were whispered, then written, then burned. 60 senators joined the conspiracy, 60 men sharing one secret. And secrets that large do not survive for long. They needed leaders. 3 men would shape the conspiracy: the architect, the symbol, and the betrayer. The architect was Gaius Cassius Longinus, a decorated general, survivor of catastrophic defeats, a man hardened by war. He hated Caesar, not because Caesar was cruel, but because Caesar was greater. Cassius had spent his life reaching for power, and Caesar had taken it all. The symbol was Marcus Junius Brutus, philosopher, idealist, descendant of the founder of the Republic. His ancestor had overthrown Rome's last king. His name carried enormous weight. With Brutus involved, the murder could be called noble. Without him, it would look like jealousy. The betrayer was Decimus Junius Brutus, Caesar's close friend, trusted commander, a man named as secondary heir in Caesar's will. He ate at Caesar's table, fought at Caesar's side, and helped plan his death. The date was chosen, March 15th, the Ides of March. But on the morning of the assassination, everything almost fell apart. Caesar's wife woke in terror. She had dreamed of his death. Storms raged over Rome. Priests reported terrible omens. Caesar hesitated. He decided not to attend the Senate meeting, and the entire conspiracy began collapsing in real time. Then Decimus arrived, his friend, his trusted ally. He laughed at the omens, said the Senate planned to honor Caesar, said staying home would look weak, and Caesar believed him. He walked to the Senate chamber, beside the man who had betrayed him. Inside, 60 senators waited, daggers hidden beneath their togas. The meeting began. A senator approached Caesar with a petition. He grabbed Caesar's toga and pulled it down. That was the signal. The first strike barely broke skin. Then, chaos. 23 stab wounds, daggers flashing, senators slipping in blood. Some attackers even wounded each other. The killing was clumsy, frantic, desperate. At first, Caesar fought back. Then he saw Brutus and stopped resisting. He pulled his toga over his face and fell beneath the statue of Pompey, his former rival. The conspirators stood over the body, covered in blood. They believed Rome would cheer. Rome did not cheer. Rome ran. The silence after the murder was not victory. It was the sound of a plan collapsing. The conspirators stepped into the Roman Forum expecting applause. Instead, they found empty streets. Doors slammed shut, windows closed, people hid in their homes. Because Rome had just watched 60 senators stab the most powerful man in the world to death in broad daylight. And the liberators had no idea what to do next. No speech prepared, no army secured, no transition of power planned. They had spent months planning how to kill Caesar, and zero time planning what came after. Within hours, the first mistake became obvious. Mark Antony was still alive, Caesar's co-consul, his loyal ally, a brilliant politician, and a dangerous survivor. On the day of the assassination, one conspirator had been assigned a simple task: keep Antony away from the Senate chamber. Trebonius intercepted him outside. He talked, delayed, distracted. While inside, Caesar was dying. The conspirators debated killing Antony too. Brutus refused. He said the assassination must look like justice, not slaughter. That decision would cost them everything. Within hours, Antony moved fast. He secured Caesar's personal papers, seized the treasury, and gained control of Caesar's will. Then he made a request. He asked permission to speak at Caesar's funeral. The conspirators agreed. Another catastrophic mistake. The funeral took place in the Roman Forum. Thousands gathered: soldiers, citizens, freed slaves, workers, veterans, people whose lives had improved under Caesar. Antony stood before them. He did not scream. He did not call for revenge. He did something far more dangerous. He spoke quietly. He read Caesar's will. Every Roman citizen would receive money, 3 months' wages for a laborer, and Caesar's private gardens would become public parks forever. The crowd began to murmur. Then Antony lifted Caesar's blood-stained toga. He pointed to each tear, each stab wound, and named the man responsible. The crowd began to cry. Then Antony asked a single question: "Does this look like the body of a tyrant?" The forum exploded. Benches were torn apart, market stalls destroyed, doors ripped from buildings. A massive funeral pyre rose in the center of Rome. Caesar's body was burned in the open square, and the crowd took torches from the flames. They went hunting. That night, Rome became a battlefield. Homes of conspirators were attacked. Buildings burned. A poet was beaten to death in the street because he shared the same name as one of the assassins. The liberators barricaded themselves behind hired gladiators. Within 2 days of killing Caesar, they could no longer safely walk the streets of Rome. A fragile truce followed. Antony negotiated amnesty. The assassins would not be prosecuted, but Caesar's laws would remain. No one was satisfied. The city was unstable. The veterans were angry. The streets were hostile. One by one, the conspirators fled Rome. Brutus left for Greece. Cassius went to Syria. Decimus moved north to Gaul. They told themselves they were regrouping. In truth, they were running. Because a new player had entered the story. An 18-year-old boy, sickly, inexperienced, unknown. Gaius Octavius, Caesar's adopted son, and heir. When Octavian arrived in Rome, no one took him seriously. He had been studying in Greece when news of Caesar's death arrived. His family begged him not to go to Rome. They told him he would be killed. He went anyway. His first act was simple. He took Caesar's name, Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus. And suddenly, everything changed. Caesar's veterans had been promised money and land. With Caesar dead, those promises were uncertain. Antony controlled the treasury. So Octavian did something shocking. He sold his own property, borrowed money, and paid the soldiers himself. Legions began switching loyalty. Antony mocked him publicly, called him a boy who owed everything to a name. That boy would outlive him by decades. By 43 BC, Rome was spiraling toward civil war again. Antony controlled armies. Octavian controlled Caesar's name and growing support. A third man entered the struggle, Lepidus, another of Caesar's generals. Instead of fighting each other, they made a deal. On a small island in a river near Bologna, the three men divided the Roman world. The second triumvirate was born, and their first decision was to create a list of enemies. If your name appeared on it, you were legally dead. Anyone could kill you, your property seized, your family stripped of protection. 300 senators, 2,000 wealthy citizens. Rome descended into terror. Neighbors betrayed neighbors, friends betrayed friends. And at the top of the list was Cicero, Rome's greatest orator. His crime, criticizing Mark Antony. Cicero tried to flee by sea. Bad weather forced him back to shore. Antony's soldiers caught him on the road. He told them, "There is nothing proper about what you are doing, but do try to kill me properly." They cut off his head and his hands. Antony's wife took his head and stabbed his tongue with a hairpin for the speeches it had made against her husband. The message was clear. Words would not save you. And next, the assassins of Caesar would die. The road to Samarkand was silent, too silent. Word had already arrived before the Mongols did. Stories, rumors, nightmares whispered from refugee to refugee. Bukhara had burned. The Shah's army had vanished. The invaders did not retreat. They did not negotiate. They did not stop. And now they were coming. Samarkand, the crown jewel of the Khwarezmian Empire, prepared for war. This was no ordinary city. It was one of the richest cities on earth. Its walls were massive. Its markets overflowed with silk, spices, and gold. Its mosques gleamed with blue tiles that reflected the sun like water. And most importantly, it had an army. A massive army. Sources estimate more than 100,000 defenders inside the city. Some accounts claim 200,000. Professional soldiers, elite cavalry, war elephants. Yes, war elephants. The Shah had gathered every force he could spare and left them here, because Samarkand was supposed to be unbreakable. It was the fortress that would stop the Mongols. But the Shah himself was not there. He had already fled. When Genghis Khan arrived outside the city in early 1220, he did not rush the walls. He studied them. For days, he rode the perimeter slowly, watching, measuring, listening. The Mongols built camps in perfect order. Fires placed in geometric lines, units positioned with surgical precision. Then came the prisoners, thousands of them, captured from previous cities, men, women, children. They were forced to march toward the walls carrying ladders and siege equipment. The defenders watched from the battlements in horror. These were their own people, used as shields, used as tools, used as expendable lives. The Mongols did not waste their own soldiers. The siege began with thunder. Catapults hurled stones the size of oxen. Chinese siege engineers launched firebombs and flaming tar. Walls that had stood for centuries began to crack. Day 1, Day 2, Day 3. The defenders fought fiercely. Arrows darkened the sky. Boiling oil poured from the towers. War elephants charged through the gates during sorties. And for a moment, it almost worked. The elephants smashed into Mongol lines. Horses panicked. Men scattered. But the Mongols adapted instantly. They opened their ranks, let the elephants pass, then surrounded them. Arrows filled the air. Spears pierced the animals' sides. Flaming projectiles struck their backs. The elephants turned, screaming, burning, stampeding back toward the gates, straight into the defenders. Chaos erupted inside the city. The Mongols did not cheer. They simply continued the siege. Then came betrayal. Inside Samarkand were thousands of Turkic mercenaries, soldiers hired to defend the city, men who had no love for the Shah. They had heard the stories. They had seen the Mongols' discipline. They understood something the city's leaders did not. This war was already lost. So they sent a message. If they surrendered, would they be spared? Genghis Khan gave a simple answer. Yes, open the gates, lay down your weapons, and live. It was a lie. The gates opened. Thousands of mercenaries marched out and surrendered. They were disarmed, separated, counted, and executed. Every single one. Genghis Khan did not forgive betrayal. He erased it. With the defenders weakened and morale shattered, the Mongols attacked from every side. Siege towers rolled forward. Ladders climbed the walls. Engineers blasted breaches into the defenses. Within days, Samarkand fell. One of the greatest cities on earth collapsed in less than a week. What followed was methodical destruction. Artisans were spared. Engineers were spared. Scholars were spared. Everyone else was not. Thousands were marched outside the city and divided into groups. Each Mongol soldier was assigned a quota of executions. Men, women, children. Numbers mattered more than names. The city was looted with military precision. Gold melted down. Silk packed into caravans. Libraries emptied. Samarkand, the pride of the Silk Road, was reduced to a resource depot. A city turned into inventory. Far away, the Shah received the news. Bukhara lost. Samarkand lost. His empire was collapsing faster than messages could travel. And now, the Mongols were hunting him. Not his army, not his generals, him. Genghis Khan gave a new order. Two of his greatest commanders stepped forward. Jebe, Subutai. Their mission was simple. Find the Shah. Chase him to the ends of the earth if necessary. Do not stop. Do not return. Do not fail. The greatest manhunt in medieval history had begun. The Shah was running. Across deserts, across mountains, across the collapsing remains of his own empire. Muhammad II, ruler of the Khwarezmian Empire, had gone from master of Central Asia to the most hunted man on earth. He had armies once, cities once, power once. Now he had fear. When Genghis Khan sent Jebe and Subutai after him, this was not a pursuit. It was a message. No ruler who defied the Mongols would ever be safe again. Not behind walls, not behind armies, not even across continents. The order was simple. Find him. Never stop. Jebe and Subutai rode with roughly 20,000 cavalry. Light, fast, relentless. They did not carry siege equipment. They did not carry baggage trains. They carried speed. Every warrior had multiple horses. They rotated mounts while riding. They slept in the saddle. They hunted while moving. They could travel over 100 kilometers in a single day. No medieval army could match this pace. The Shah never stopped moving. But the Mongols never stopped closing. Muhammad fled west, into Persia. City after city slammed its gates shut when he arrived. Once they had welcomed him as their ruler. Now they saw him as a curse. Because wherever the Shah went, the Mongols followed. Nishapur trembled. Ray panicked. Hamadan prayed. No one wanted to be the next Samarkand. The Shah's army disintegrated as he fled. Generals abandoned him. Governors refused his orders. Local rulers declared independence overnight. His empire was not conquered. It evaporated. Winter arrived. Snow covered the mountains of Persia. Blizzards swallowed entire roads. Still, the Mongols rode. They crossed frozen rivers. They climbed icy passes. They marched through storms that killed ordinary armies. They did not stop, because stopping meant failure, and failure meant death. The Shah fled to the Caspian Sea, desperate, exhausted, paranoid. He boarded a small ship and sailed to a remote island, an empty place, cold, wind-beaten, forgotten. He believed the sea would protect him. He believed distance would save him. He believed wrong. By now, Muhammad II was no longer an emperor. He was a fugitive. He had lost everything. His cities were gone. His armies were gone. His family scattered. His empire existed only in memory. He began to unravel. Chroniclers describe a man consumed by terror, a ruler who saw enemies in every shadow, a king who trusted no one, not even his own sons. He waited for Mongol sails that never came. He listened for hoofbeats across the ocean. Fear had conquered the conqueror. In 1220, on that lonely island, the Shah died. Not in battle, not in glory, not surrounded by loyal soldiers. He died in rags, alone, broken. The man who had ordered the execution of Mongol envoys, the man who believed himself untouchable, died hiding from the consequences of his own decision. But the Mongols were not finished, because the death of the Shah did not end the war. It only removed the excuse. Now the campaign changed. This was no longer revenge. This was conquest. Jebe and Subutai did not turn back. They rode west, into lands no Mongol army had ever seen, into the Caucasus, into the steppes beyond, toward Europe. Their pursuit of one man had become a reconnaissance mission for an empire. They were mapping the future battlefield of the world. Behind them, Central Asia burned. Ahead of them, new continents waited. The Mongol storm had not reached its peak. It had only just begun. While Central Asia still burned behind them, Jebe and Subutai kept riding west. They were no longer chasing a king. They were scouting the future. What began as a manhunt had become something far more dangerous, a reconnaissance mission for the largest empire the world would ever see. The Mongols entered lands no army from the east had ever penetrated. The Caucasus Mountains rose before them like a wall. Snow covered the peaks. Narrow passes twisted like traps. Local rulers believed the mountains would stop the invaders. Every empire believed that about something. Mountains, deserts, rivers, winter. The Mongols believed in none of them. The kingdoms of the Caucasus united to stop the approaching storm. Georgians, Armenians, Caucasian tribes, warriors hardened by centuries of mountain warfare, men who knew every pass, every valley, every ambush point. They prepared to crush the unfamiliar horsemen from the east. The first battle shocked them. Mongol cavalry did not fight like any army they had faced before. They did not charge blindly. They did not hold formation. They did not fight for honor. They fought for victory. Arrows fell like rain. Retreats turned into ambushes. Ambushes turned into encirclements. The Allied army broke. The mountains had not stopped the Mongols. They had only slowed them. News spread westward. Strange riders, unstoppable archers, cities erased. Rumors traveled faster than armies. Europe began to hear whispers. At first, no one believed them. Jebe and Subutai reached the vast Eurasian steppe, endless grasslands, rolling horizons, a land made for horse empires. Here lived the Kipchaks, the Cumans, masters of the western steppe, nomadic warriors, expert riders, proud and powerful. They understood steppe warfare. They believed they understood the Mongols. They were wrong. The Mongols defeated the Cumans in a series of brutal battles. The survivors fled west, into the lands of the Rus, into Eastern Europe. They carried terror with them. They carried warnings. They carried stories no one wanted to believe. The Cuman leaders begged the princes of the Rus for help. They told them about cities burned to ash, armies annihilated, kingdoms erased. They spoke of an enemy unlike any they had seen, fast, disciplined, relentless, an enemy that never stopped. The Rus princes gathered in council. They had fought each other for generations. Now they faced a common threat. For the first time in years, they united. A massive coalition army formed. Rus princes, Cuman horsemen, warriors from across Eastern Europe, an army determined to stop the Mongol advance. In 1223, the two forces met near the Kalka River. The Mongols were outnumbered, greatly outnumbered. But numbers had never decided Mongol victories. Strategy did, discipline did, patience did. The battle began with a retreat. The Mongols ran for days. The coalition army pursued. They believed the enemy was breaking. They believed victory was close. They believed wrong. After 9 days of pursuit, the Mongols turned around. The retreat had been a trap. The coalition army was exhausted, disorganized, separated. The Mongols attacked with full force. What followed was a massacre. The coalition army collapsed. Princes were captured. Thousands were slaughtered. The Mongols executed captured leaders beneath wooden platforms, crushing them slowly while feasting above. A message. Always a message. Then the Mongols did something unexpected. They left. They rode back east. Europe was stunned. The storm had appeared, destroyed an army, and vanished. Many believed the danger had passed. They did not know this had only been a preview, a test, a warning. The Mongols now knew the roads, the rivers, the kingdoms. They would return, and next time, they would not leave. While Europe tried to forget the riders from the east, Genghis Khan was preparing the next phase. The Khwarezmian Empire was gone. Its ruler was dead. Its armies shattered. But the Mongol war machine was just beginning to accelerate. Revenge had turned into expansion. Punishment had turned into policy. The world had seen the Mongols. Now the world would face them. Back in the east, the great Khan gathered intelligence. Messengers rode day and night. Reports arrived from Persia, the Caucasus, the steppe. Everything Jebe and Subutai had learned was delivered to Genghis Khan. Routes, rivers, cities, kingdoms, weaknesses. The Mongols did not guess. They prepared. Meanwhile, the lands of Persia were collapsing into chaos. Without the Shah, the empire shattered into fragments. Local rulers fought each other. Cities stood isolated. Trade routes collapsed. The region was bleeding. And the Mongols returned to finish the work. The next campaigns were not about diplomacy. No envoys, no warnings, no negotiations, only conquest. Cities that once stood proudly along the Silk Road now faced the full Mongol war machine. Merv, Herat, Balkh, ancient cities, centers of culture and trade, places that had stood for centuries. Each would face the same question: submit or disappear. Merv chose resistance. It was one of the greatest cities in the Islamic world, a center of learning, a center of trade, a jewel of the desert. Its leaders believed its walls would protect it. Walls had failed before. The siege was swift. Mongol engineers built siege engines, catapults, siege towers, battering rams. Technology taken from China, tactics learned from Persia, discipline forged on the steppe. The Mongol army was no longer just cavalry. It was a complete war machine. Merv fell. What followed shocked even medieval chroniclers. Mass executions, systematic slaughter. Entire populations marched into the desert and killed. Numbers recorded by historians vary wildly, but all agree on one thing: the city ceased to exist. Herat resisted next. It rebelled after initially surrendering. This was the worst possible decision. To the Mongols, rebellion after submission was the ultimate betrayal. Punishment was absolute. Herat was destroyed. Bulk followed. Another ancient city erased from the map. The pattern became clear to the world. Resistance meant annihilation. Submission meant survival. The Mongols were not unpredictable. They were terrifyingly consistent. This was psychological warfare on a global scale. Stories spread faster than armies. Cities began surrendering without a fight. Gates opened at the mere rumor of Mongol approach. Fear became the Mongols' greatest weapon. Trade routes changed. Refugees fled in waves. Entire regions emptied. Historians estimate that millions died during these campaigns. The Silk Road, once the artery of global trade, became a corridor of silence. The world was changing, and the change had a name: the Mongol Empire. But even as cities fell and kingdoms trembled, time was running out for the man who started it all, Genghis Khan himself. In the midst of conquest, the great Khan would soon face his final campaign and his final enemy. Years of war had reshaped the world. Empires had fallen, cities had vanished, trade routes had shifted. From China to Persia, the Mongol Empire now stretched farther than any land empire in history, and at the center of it all stood one man, Genghis Khan. He was now in his 60s, an age few steppe warriors ever reached. He had survived battles, betrayals, assassinations, and endless campaigns. But the Mongol expansion was not finished. One final enemy remained: the Western Xia. This kingdom had once been an ally. They had supported Genghis Khan in earlier wars. But when he demanded troops for his campaigns in the West, they refused. To many rulers, this would have been a political disagreement. To Genghis Khan, it was betrayal, and betrayal had only one punishment. In 1226, the great Khan launched his final campaign. The Mongol army moved once more across deserts and mountains. Siege engines rolled, cities trembled. The Western Xia fought desperately. They knew what happened to kingdoms that resisted. They knew what was coming. The war was brutal. City after city fell. Fortresses collapsed. Entire regions were devastated. Even by Mongol standards, this campaign was relentless. It was as if Genghis Khan knew time was running out. Then, in 1227, something happened. During the campaign, the great Khan fell ill. The details are unclear. Some chronicles speak of injuries from a fall, others of illness, some of wounds from battle. The truth vanished with the steppe winds. But one fact is certain: Genghis Khan was dying. The man who had reshaped the world lay in a tent, far from the lands of his birth. Around him stood generals who had conquered continents, sons who would inherit an empire. Outside, the campaign continued, because the Mongol war machine did not stop, even for its creator. Before his death, Genghis Khan gave his final orders. The Western Xia would be destroyed completely. No mercy, no survival, and his death would be kept secret until victory was secured. Even in his final moments, he thought like a conqueror. In August 1227, Genghis Khan died. The exact location remains unknown. His burial place remains hidden to this day. According to legend, those who buried him were killed, and those who killed them were killed in turn. A chain of secrecy stretching into eternity. The greatest conqueror in history vanished into the earth, without a tomb, without a monument. Only an empire remained. When news of his death was finally revealed, the world did not celebrate, because the Mongol Empire did not collapse. It expanded. His sons and grandsons would continue the conquest. China, the Middle East, Eastern Europe. The storm did not end. It multiplied. Genghis Khan had not just built an empire, he had built a machine, one that would reshape the map of the world for generations. And it all began with a caravan. merchants carrying silk and gold, ambassadors carrying a message of peace, executed, mutilated. A single decision that triggered a chain of events, ending with the fall of empires, the death of millions, and the rise of the largest land empire in history. History often turns on small moments: a message ignored, an envoy killed, a ruler who believed himself untouchable. The Khwarezmian Empire made that mistake, and the world was never the same again. Thank you for listening. If you want more stories where history turns dark and forgotten empires speak again, subscribe to Crimson Historians. Until the next story, until the next forgotten chapter.